These are real 911 calls, disturbing, mysterious, and true. Each story will send chills down your spine and slowly drift you into sleep. This story is completely free. We don't put any ads, which means we don't earn anything from these videos. All we ask is one small favor. Please subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. It's free for you, but it gives us the motivation to keep making more real police stories every night. Also, tell us in the comments which city are you watching from and what time is it right now. We love reading your messages. Now, let's begin the story. Story number 1. I've worked nights most of my career in a county that folds into the city's outer edge. We take the leftovers thin streets between cornfields, cul-de-sacs that stop at chain-link fences, half-finished developments with glossy signs and no houses. That night was quiet in the way that usually means it won't stay that way. A cool front had moved through and left a wet smell on the pavement. It was 0:31 hours when the call came open line. Phase 2 coordinates pulling to the end of Yorkfield Court, the last house before the barricades. Dispatch sent it out plain. Unit 14. Check the open 911 line at 619 Yorkfield Court. Sounds like a juvenile whispering. Line stayed open 3 minutes. No callback. CAD shows disconnected landline history. Code SWI. I was Unit 14. I acknowledged and rolled. The laptop screen painted my hands blue. I killed the siren, no reason to wake the block, and turned the corner onto Yorkfield. The houses out there were mostly empty. The developer went under a few years back, and the bank's been holding places like props. 619 had the yellow condemnation sticker curling on the front window. A porch light was on a soft, tired bulb that looked left on for a guest who'd forgotten to arrive. Dispatch 14. Is there a callback number? Negative 14. ANI divided by ALI shows inactive landline. Prior calls from this address. Last one in 2008. Domestic disturbance. No current utility service per notes. Open line captured ambient sounds and a child's voice saying, quote, "Are you coming?" End quote. Then whispering. No further. I parked offset to the driveway, nose out in case I needed to leave quickly. A freight train moaned somewhere beyond the trees. I stepped out, tugged my vest into place, and gave the house the long look you learn to give windows, doors, shadows under the eaves, curtains breathing. No movement. I keyed up softly. 14 on scene. My radio clicked. Copy. 14. Advise. I walked the sidewalk. The porch boards gave under my boots. I announced myself and knocked gentle first, then the harder official knock that carries. Sheriff's office? If anyone inside needs help, call out. We're here to check on you. Silence. Then the subtle scrape of branches against siding. The porch light buzzed, that old filament hum like a trapped moth. I tried the handle, locked. In my flashlight beam, the condemnation notice said, unsafe interior staircase, mold, and unstable wiring. The meter on the side was blank. Dispatch, door is secured. Any alarm calls for this property? Negative alarm history for tonight. Do you want a second unit? Affirmative. Send 12 my way. My partner Miguel was a couple streets over finishing a traffic stop. I could wait. You learn to keep your patience on calls that don't make immediate sense, because rushing into a bad set can make it worse. While I waited, I circled the house. The backyard was all thistles and the skeleton of a patio set. The rear slider had a bar in its track and another sticker flaking on the glass. No footprints in the dirt, no recent tracks under the windowsills. It looked like a place that had been empty for years, except for the porch light that was still on, casting a lazy oval onto the boards. The radio whispered with Miguel's voice. 12 en route to 14. A minute passed, then 2. I stood at the back fence and listened. There's a quiet that's natural bugs, distant highway. And there's a quiet that feels like a power outage in a dream. This was the second kind. My own breath sounded loud. And then, soft and high like breath blown across the mouth of a bottle, I heard, "Hello?" I turned. It was inside the house. Not loud, not panicked. Just a question, small and hopeful. I went back to the slider and pressed my ear to the glass. "Sheriff's office. If you can hear me, Say something so I know where you are. Are you coming? The same phrase dispatch had logged. No movement of curtains. No little face peeking around a corner. Just the words shaped by air, like someone crouched close to the floor. Miguel's headlights washed the street out front. I motioned him around. He trotted up, read the sticker, and made the face we make when a simple call feeds us nonsense. You hear it? I asked. Hear what? I waited. Nothing but the porch light hum, and his engine ticking as it cooled. Had a voice. Little kid. From inside. Miguel is steady. He looked at the lock, then me. We've got exigency if there's a kid inside. But I don't love that sticker. I didn't either. Let's do a quick welfare check. Minimal intrusion, no damage. If we can't get in without breaking, we'll call code enforcement to approve entry. We went back to the front. As if in answer, the porch light flickered once, a long blink, then steadied. Miguel pressed his ear against the panel. I got nothing. He cupped his hands to the glass and peered in. It's dark. Can't see a holdup. He stepped back. There's a glow in the hall. Like a TV. I glanced at the meter again. Dead. The wires had that slack, disconnected slump. No power, I said. He shrugged. Could be a battery lantern? I knocked again. Sheriff's office. If you're in there and you're safe, come to the door. If you're hurt, tell me where you are. The house held its breath. We had a Knox box key for bank-held properties. Dispatch confirmed the code. I popped the box, got the key, and stood under the yellow hum of the porch light with Miguel on my side. I turned the lock, opened the door, and announced again. Sheriff's office. Make yourself known. Cool, stale air slipped out wet wood, paper dust. The beam of my light cut down a hallway that swallowed it. To the left, a living room with a sofa arm, like a beached whale. To the right, the glow Miguel had seen faint blue from deeper in, uphill from the rear where the ground sloped. It did look like a television stain against a wall. We moved slow, clearing like a training day, even though it was only the two of us. The floors creaked. My radio popped once with static where it usually didn't. Dispatch 14. We've entered to conduct a welfare check. There's an unexplained light source inside. No signs of forced entry. Copy 14. Units clear for traffic. We followed the blue stain to a short hallway. At its end was a bedroom with no door. Just hinges like pulled teeth. Inside, propped on a milk crate, an old tube TV gave off a picture that wasn't quite a picture rolling lines. That ghostly snow that isn't static, but some old channel bleeding. There was no plug in the wall. The cord lay on the floor, cut. A little plastic phone toy sat on the crate beside it, face up like a smile. Miguel shot me the look again. No power, he repeated. I approached the set. The glass was warm, like a living thing. The picture crawled and, just for a second, held a shape like the outline of a room that wasn't this room. A sofa, a lamp, a doorway. Then the image dissolved back into lines. The little phone toy was scuffed, the kind toddlers get in hand-me-downs. When I touched it, it vibrated the lightest buzz like it had a dying battery, then fell quiet. From the hall behind us, a whisper. Hello? We spun. Sheriff's office, I said again. Voice that measured tone that says I'm not here to hurt you. We're here to help. Miguel swept his light into the hall. It came back with dust hanging in the beam like weather. Man, he said under his breath. I don't like this. My radio cracked, clean and sudden. 14. Be advised, we just got another open line from your location. Callback number appears as the landline for 619. Last active 2008. Dispatcher on the line says she can hear movement and male voices. Are you on your portable? I keyed up. Affirmative. 14 and 12 are inside clearing now. Male voices would be us. Dispatch paused, then, copy. She also hears a child saying, Are you coming? Miguel glanced at me. Yeah, he said softly, like he was talking to the room. We heard. We worked the house. Kitchen empty except a ceramic bowl with a crack like a straight line. Pantry open, a sweet stale smell of spilled cereal. Bathroom mirror spotted with old moisture. Every room had that glow of a place once held together by habit and then let go. No footprints in the dust but ours. In the second bedroom, the closet door hung slightly off. I pulled it open and stepped aside. Nothing but a wooden rod bowed in the middle. On the shelf above, a stack of magazines with dates rolling back 15 years. On the top one, someone had pressed their thumb and left half a print in the dust that somehow looked new. We found the landline, a beige rectangle on the kitchen wall. The line had been cut near the baseboard like an old vine. The phone's cradle was empty. Under the counter, a coil of phone cord lay like a sleeping thing. I smoothed it with a boot. At the end of that cord, almost under the toe kick, was a handset older model, with a yellowed plastic face and a sticker that once said, "Call 911." The talk button had a crack across it. When I lifted it, the silence in it wasn't regular silence. It had a faint river sound, as if a faraway room was holding its breath too. Miguel took it from me and pressed the button out of habit. The tiny speaker gave a hiccup of static. Then a thin voice. Not the kid. Not quite adult either. More like a recording left too close to a magnet. It said, "Are you?" The rest blurred into a hum. He set it down like it might burn him. We looked at each other and did the only thing you do in our job when a thing doesn't make sense. We went back to the training. We finished the search. We cleared the attic hatch with our lights and our ears and our patience. We checked the garage. Its smell of tires gone flat. We did not find a child. We did not find anyone. The TV turned itself darker by degrees until the room it pretended to be slipped entirely back into the tube. Dispatch 14, I said at last. Interior clear. No persons located. We did find a disconnected landline handset and a TV that was active without power. We're going to secure the residence and clear. There was a longer pause than usual. Maybe the dispatcher was looking at the same notes I was. Copy 14. Be advised, the open line terminated on its own. Timestamp shows start at 0:28 hours. End 0:31. That's prior to your arrival. I looked at my watch. 0:47. I had been on scene when the porch light hummed and the radio told me the line was open. Dispatch, confirm times, affirmative. 0:28 to 0:31. Then your arrival at 0:36. Miguel's face was pale in the beam now, not scared, but that thin look you get when the world steps a centimeter out of true and you know it's not big enough to file paperwork on. Maybe overlapping entries, he murmured. Maybe. I locked the door. I slid the key back into the Knox box and closed it with the little click that always makes me feel like I'm tucking a thing in. The porch light did its long blink again, then steadied. As we walked down the path, a freight of wind ran the length of the street and made the stop sign speak its hollow metal syllables. We stood by our cars to write our notes. It's the boring part of this story, but it's the part that matters. It's how you pin the strangeness down at the time so your brain doesn't adjust it later. The details were simple. Open line, whispering. Address is shuttered and unoccupied. Entry with key. No one inside. Unexplained light. No exigency located. The kid's voice in my memory wrote itself down softer than it had sounded in the hall. We cleared the call. I was a block away when dispatch broke in, her voice careful. 14. We're getting another open line pinged from your last location. Same number. Caller is silent now. Line shows live until 0:44. I braked and watched the porch light through the trees, just visible. It glowed steady. I keyed up. Copy. Any request for us to return? Negative. We'll document and contact the number's provider in the morning. Miguel keyed. 12 copies. I went back by that house 3 more times before my shift ended. Each time, the porch light was on. Each time, it met me with the same innocent hum. It became like checking a baby on a monitor that isn't really broadcasting. At 5:12, when the sky had started to blue, the bulb finally went dark. No one had come to touch the switch. There's a lot of ways to explain pieces of what happened. Power can feed odd strands of a house in ways that don't make sense to anyone who isn't an electrician. Old phone lines hold a charge long after they're cut, enough to do some nothing with. Radios do weird things around certain structures. The brain does weirder things in a house where everything is almost familiar. All that is true. I pulled the CAD later that week on my report. The previous open line 2008 was logged with nearly the same phrasing. Child whispering. Asks, "Are you coming?" Units check. House cleared. No one located. The note was brief, like it belonged to a busier night than ours. No contact info. No follow-up. I drive by Yorkfield Court now and then. The barricades are still up. The chain-link fence shakes in a good wind. 619 still wears its yellow sticker. Edges more curled. The porch light is gone. The fixture sits there like a sunken eye. And sometimes, on late shift when the calls quiet down and the world leans on its thin edge, dispatch will chirp into someone's ear, not always mine, with the kind of voice she uses for oddball things. Open line, no callback, juvenile whispering. Different street, different number. The same cadence, a question not raised so much as placed gently on the floor between you and the door you haven't opened yet. It's not the loud calls that keep you. It's the soft ones where a house breathes back at you, where you stand with a key in your hand and wonder, not what could hurt you, but what wants you to say you're there. That night I said it more times than I needed to. Sheriff's office, over and over, like I could answer the question by repeating my name. Are you coming? The words are simple. They don't even mean one thing. They live in the part of me that stays awake when the radio is quiet. Sometimes, walking up to a door somewhere else, miles away, I think I hear a small voice through wood, and I remember that warm glass screen showing a room that wasn't there. I announce, and I wait, and I listen for the wrong kind of silence. Story number 2. Nights have their own rhythm here. The city doesn't sleep so much as it murmurs late buses sighing at stops, foxes screaming like broken brakes, rain worrying at the bins behind takeaways. Most of the real noise, the fights, the music complaints, burn out by 1 or 2. What's left is the thin stuff. That's when the calls that feel like air get through. We were on immediate response. Blue light car, me and Mark. It was just gone 2:10 when Control came up on the air with that voice she uses for the odd ones. Sierra 2-1, grade 1, silent 999. AML pin shows Albion Tower, flat 1905. Caller pressed 5 to 5. No talking, line still live. CAD reads historic occupant, elderly female. Housing account void. No key holder. Any other units shout up. I thumbed the PTT. Sierra 2, 1 taking, running from Trinity Street. 5 minutes with greens depending on traffic. Copy, Sierra 2. 1. Be advised. Multiple 999 seconds from that address last 12 months. No caller found. Housing tag says decanted block, scrap scheduled. Caretaker not on nights. Mark glanced over. We both knew Albion. 30 floors of concrete and wind. It's been half empty for years. People moved out. Doors screwed shut. Top floors sealed when the lifts started failing. The council stuck up notices about a redevelopment that never got past drawings. It was raining, that light rain that makes everything look soft and slick. We rolled in under the overhang, the car's fan ticking and the smell of wet brakes coming through the vents. The lobby doors were propped on a brick, no concierge. The notice board had leaflets for a residents' meeting from 2 years ago, corners greased from fingers that had stopped passing. The lift that still worked heaved its way down and opened as if it was embarrassed to be seen. The other one had its doors taped. Mark hit 19. The panel's bulb for 21 was missing outright, like someone had pried it out. The lift shuddered upwards, stopped 3 times for no one. You get used to buildings that seem to breathe. Control came back. Sierra 2. 1. We still have the line open. Call taker reports hearing a phone ring in the background. Sounds old style. No speech. Received, I said. If they pressed 5 to 5, they're engaged. We'll push entry under Section 17 if no answer. I slid the enforcer out from under my feet just to have it handy. You learn to plan your hands as well as your head. 19 opened to a long corridor, magnolia paint and strip lights buzzing with a tone you feel in your teeth. There's a smell in these blocks. Hot dust, old dinners, wet mats, doors with numbers screwed crooked. A kettle boiled somewhere behind a wall and then clicked off. A sound that makes a flat feel alive even when you haven't met its heart. 1,905. had a council sticker ghost where one had been peeled off. The handle was scuffed, the jam repaired 3 different ways by 3 different caretakers. Someone had written "post" in biro over the letterbox and then crossed it out. I knocked the first knock, then the second knock that's more official. "Police! If you can hear me, come to the door. We're here to help. If you can't open the door, call out." From inside, through actual air rather than my head, came a ringing. Not a mobile trill. The old 2-tone British ring, clipped and polite. Brr, brr, pause, brr, brr, like a phone from the last century. It rang twice, stopped, rang again as if it was taking its time. Mark and I looked at each other, and he did that little tilt with his head. That means he hears it too. I keyed up softly. Sierra 2, 1 on scene. We have audible ring inside flat 1905. Almost at once, the call taker looped in on the radio, which they don't often do. Her voice was low, like it is when she doesn't want to spook anyone. Sierra 2, 1. We can hear the same ring on the live line. We're not inputting tones. It's coming from the caller end. Still, no voice. Caller pressed 5 to 5 at the start. Copy. We'll attempt contact. If no joy, we're forcing. I put my ear to the door. You learn to hear the difference between a TV and a person breathing. The ring stopped. A soft sound came through, like someone brushing a sleeve past a receiver. Then nothing. "Police," I said again, a little louder, steady, the way you pitch it for someone who might be scared. "If you're unwell or can't reach the door, shout now." Silence, except the building itself, clicking and humming. The strip light above us flickered a paralon, little, and then held. "Control? Can you confirm the occupant?" Mark asked. He had the handheld out, reading the CAD. "Says void?" "Affirm. Property marked void since November. Previous tenant deceased. No new tenancy." Housing officer note says, "Cleared." Meters removed. I looked at the letterbox and used my torch to peer through. You can't see much through a letterbox. Flats have inner lobbies and coats hung up, but I got the sense of a narrow hall, light hitting the far wall, a strip of floor. No movement, no light under doors. We went through the steps because that's the job. I called the number Control had on file for the flat, expecting nothing. It rang once in my ear and then said, "Number not recognized." Meanwhile, inside the door, the old ring started again. Brr, brr, pause, brr, brr. As if the flat itself was taking the call. The hair on my forearm signed its name. "Control, pushing under section 17 for save life," I said. No answer. "Suspicious circumstances, active 999, with silent solution." "Approved" came back. "Log power of entry, no other units free." We put on gloves more from habit than anything. Mark took the hinges. I took the lock side. The door gave on the second hit. Not dramatically, just a tired man sitting down. The smell that came out wasn't rot or chemical. It was the smell of an empty place. A little damp, dust, something like old paper. "Police, show yourself," I announced, stepping into the left so Mark could flow right. "We don't have the numbers or the space to dance around. You just go clean. Slow. Calling your corners." The flat had been stripped more or less, no sofa, no bed. The carpets had been pulled, leaving the edges fuzzy with underlay. The kitchen had a magnet stuck to the extractor that said, "Don't forget your keys," and nothing else. The sockets were plate only. The meter cupboard was empty. The light switch didn't do anything when I tried it. So we used our torches, and the torch beams made the dust look like weather. And yet, from somewhere deeper in, the phone rang again with that deliberate old ring. We followed the sound like you follow a song down a hall. It came from the second bedroom, the one facing the estate. On the wall by the skirting, the old BT master socket sat, yellowed. Nothing was plugged into it. On the bare floor below it, as if placed there for us like the start of a puzzle, sat a lifeline box, the telecare unit they give to elderly residents. A little beige plastic square with a speaker, a big red button, and a wire cut short where its line should have been. Its power light was dark. Its call light green blinked lazy. It shouldn't have been able to do anything without a mains supply, not after months. But it made a little chirping noise, polite as a bird. The ring didn't come from the lifeline. It came from the hallway beyond, faint but present. We worked back out, trying not to chase echoes. The ring stopped again as our boots receded from the bedroom and started up once more when we reached the lounge, like it was keeping itself halfway between us and where it wanted to be. Control. Describe the ring you're hearing, Mark asked. Because sometimes detail is the only thing that keeps your head on straight. Call taker says 2 bursts, then pause. Repeats like a landline. No recorded prompt. Still no voice. She can hear your knocking. So the line was live. The operator could hear us. The call had come from here, yet there was no working line. We tried our handheld to dial back the unknown number that popped up on the CAD, just a string of digits with a local STD code, but it returned dead. Those things can be explained. Old numbers get recycled. AML pings to the last known if the number can't share its data. Telecare units misdial when they fault. There's always a spreadsheet that can be made to swallow something. In the lounge, near the balcony, we found the phone itself. Not plugged into anything, but placed on the floor with its curly cord looped like a sleeping cat, sat an old push-button phone, cream plastic, maybe 80s. The kind that does ring on its own if there's line voltage. That its ringer was firing without a line didn't make sense. I lifted it. It was heavier than modern handsets. The line cord was cut. The receiver had the faint oil polish feel of something that had been wiped down a lot in its day and then left. When I put the receiver to my ear, out of reflex more than expectation, I didn't hear a dial tone. I heard our building, quiet and damp and vibrating with its own age. Beneath that, a very soft breath that could have been my own in the cup of the plastic. I said, "Hello?" It's not what you're meant to say on a scene. But it slipped out normal, as if I'd picked up a home phone. From the receiver, a little delayed, I heard my own. "Hello? Come back to me." Flattened, like it had been recorded onto tape that had been stretched. Then a tiny click, and the ring started in my hand. I put the receiver back in its cradle, more carefully than anything deserves. Mark was at the balcony door, peering through the glass. The estate below was mostly sleeping, the odd blue flicker from someone's telly, the odd dart of a fox down a cut-through. Rain made the car park look packed with oil. We both stood with that phone between us. "You thinking what I'm thinking?" he asked. "I'm thinking we log it exactly as it's happening," I said. "And we don't get creative." Control came up again. Sierra 2. 1, be advised. Caller terminated. Call duration 11 minutes. We attempted callback and received number not recognized. We're opening a fault ticket with BT. Do you require any other services? Negative, I said, and then added, because once you've felt the gap between sense and what you're standing in, you start filling with habit. We're going to make inquiries with neighbors. Please update housing for insecure. We resecured as best we could, one of us holding, one of us putting the door chain across from the inside and then stepping out and pulling it through. That old trick that only barely counts as security. Before we left, I tested the lifeline box again. Its green light blinked in its own slow time. The big red call button had wear marks on it. Someone had kept their thumb there a lot. I pressed it. It did nothing. No dial-out tone, no voice from a call handler saying, "Hello, Mrs. Whoever," just the polite chirp and that sleepy light. The corridor had 2 occupied flats at that end. We did door knocks. A man in a vest answered one, smell of aftershave and sleep. He said he hadn't heard anything, except the lift stopping and starting. An older woman cracked her door on the chain for us, peered out with eyes bright from the kind of sleep that's no longer than a blink. "That flat's empty," she said, as if that settled it. "They took Mrs. H's things right away. She used to call her daughter every night at the same time. Bad clock in the kitchen, you know, so she'd always be early or late." "You lot have been before, have we?" I asked. I knew we had in general, but the way she said it made it sound like a regular appointment. "They sent a knock and wellness man from the council," she said. "He stood in the hall and called out like you did, and then wrote down nothing. It's the wind. It whistles down from the roof and into the wires, makes the phones sing." She said wires like the word was older than both of us. And then she shut the door. We cleared with control. "No persons found. Void property seems to be generating false calls, I said. It felt like I was writing the top line of a story whose ending would always be unknown. On the way down, the lift stopped on 21, although we hadn't pressed it. When the doors opened, we saw only plywood and a long, dustless hallway. A draft ran its fingers across the carpet as if someone had just walked ahead of us and we were late to follow. We didn't get out. We let the lift carry us down until it met the lobby and the rain sound and our car. You brace against the strangeness with work. We updated the CAD, attached a note to the housing tag, marked the fault for BT and the telecare provider. We drove a slow loop, a courtesy lap of the block, and then took the next grade 2 that dinged our way. A noise complaint on a street where the bins always fall over and someone always thinks it's kids. An hour later, Control put us back on voice. Sierra 2. 1. For info. We've just had a second 990. 9 from the Albion Tower number. Line answered itself. Call taker could hear male voices in the stairwell. Sounds like you and Mark talking, but your airwave shows suppressed. Call timestamp 217. That was before we'd even reached the door. Copy, I said. That's all. Because what else do you say on the air? We went back once more before end of shift. Partly because of the call. Partly because I wanted to prove to myself that houses and flats and wires behave. The lobby had a new gloss of rain. The lift refused to come down past 15. We walked. The corridor on 19 felt different in that not one thing way. The lifeline box in 1905 still blinked its slow little beat. The phone on the floor was where we'd left it. I picked up the receiver again, held it to my ear like someone goaded by a trick that hadn't fully revealed its shape. The breath inside it, if that's what it was, seemed fainter. I set it down. The ring did not return. A month after, I was writing up a different job and remembered, the thing like you remember a word you couldn't place. I pulled the CAD for Albion. There it was a run of calls over the year, always after midnight, always silent than the old ring, always ending without an answer. One of the earliest ones had a note from a sergeant I knew. He wrote, almost as an aside, attended with PCX, voids. Lift to 21, opened itself. Heard odd ring inside flat. BT report line ceased in 2019. No person seen. He'd attached a photo of the lifeline unit, same model, same red button. The timestamp on his photo was a year to the day before ours, a few minutes different. I scrolled down. Housing eventually removed the entire bank of phone points in that stack. BT closed their fault ticket with, no fault found. The calls kept coming, albeit less. Then the demolition started. The tower went down floor by floor, careful and slow. The week the top floors came off, Control pushed an odd-looking CAD. 999 abandoned call. It said, origin unknowable. AML plotted to midpoint of former Albion Tower footprint, now open ground. No audio. Recontact not possible. It's new. Builds there now. A neat tangle of streets, with names that sound like they're halfway between poetry and wishful thinking. The calls have stopped for now, but when I drive past on nights, window down, I sometimes think I can hear that polite two-burst ring underneath the city's other noises, and I get the feeling you get when someone has stood behind you and walked away before you turned. There are explanations in the world. Wiring can sing in the wind. Lifeline boxes have battery backups. Old numbers ghost in systems. AML is only as good as the mobile it talks to. A building that's held hundreds of lives will echo for a while until the next thing fills its corners. All of that is true, and you can paper the job with it. But the voice on the 999 line that night, the breath, the ring, the exact way it matched the sound in that empty flat, sits somewhere neatly filed in me under, answered, no further. When someone asks me what nights are like, I don't talk about the chases. I tell them about standing in a room that hasn't belonged to anyone for a long time, holding a phone that shouldn't ring, and saying, hello? Like I was home, and hearing myself reply from somewhere a bit to the left of time. Story number 3. My beat then was a coastal district where the streets are narrow and the air smells faintly of salt even at midnight. I worked out of a Coban, just a small police box at a busy crossroads paired most nights with Cato. We did the usual rounds. Shop closures, Slow passes by the fishing co-op. Checking shutters on the old arcade that was down to 2 lit units, and 1 vending machine that sold lukewarm tea. Nights were steady. The radio was a murmur, not a shout. It leaves a lot of room for you to listen to the city itself. At 2:11, the 110 line lit up for a silent call. The dispatcher patched us the details in that level voice they all learned to keep. Unit 21, silent 110 from public telephone, at Suginamori Elementary School front gate. AML matches public phone registry. Open line. Minimal background audio. Possible wind. Musical tone faint. No speech. Please attend and confirm security. Suginamori Elementary had closed the year before. Low enrollments. Consolidation. It happens everywhere now. The city put up metal grates across the doors, and the Board of Education posted notices about relocating the library books. Some of the kids drew goodbye pictures that stayed taped to the windows until the sun ate the colors. There used to be a payphone by the front gate for parents, and for those neighborhood calls every school has. I left my lunch. I'm at club practice, can you come? The line was meant to be removed with everything else. Cato flicked me a look. He was always better at seeing the oddness before I let myself admit it. The payphone's still registered? Dispatch has it, I said, reading the scroll on our in-car. Public phone tag matches the gate. He shook his head slightly, as if that phone had been refused by time and yet remained on a spreadsheet somewhere. The roads out to Suginamori School are the kind that loop around rice fields and then cut up between neat houses. At night, you can smell the ocean if the wind is south and the mountain if it's north. That night, the wind was busy doing small chores, turning the whirlybirds on roofs, tucking loose posters flat against poles. Our patrol car's light bar washed the road signs with a weak blue as we coasted to the front of the school. The gate was closed, chain looped twice, city education padlock. The dredged gravel in the lot beyond had settled into shallow waves. Security lights along the eaves of the main building gave off a cold white and then flickered out in sequence, as if they had seen us and decided to sleep. To the left of the gate, where the payphone had been, there was only a square of darker concrete and 4 bolts set in a rectangle. The bolts had gathered rust halos like little suns. There was no phone, no booth, no box. I said our arrival on the radio. 2. 1 on scene, Suginamori Elementary. Gate secured. No payphone present at the registered location. The dispatcher's answer came back a little delayed. 2. 1. The line is still open. Call taker reports a periodic tone. 2 notes, repeating. No voice. Wind noise, faint. I knew the sound she meant before I heard it. Many neighborhoods here have a chime that plays in the afternoon. A gentle public broadcast to remind kids that it's time to go home. Ours was Yuyake Koyake. Even a quiet hum of it can make you think of schoolyards emptying and small shoes squeaking on shiny floors. Hearing it in the small morning hours is like hearing a lullaby at dawn. Can you hear it now? I asked, setting my palm against the gate. Metal will tell you things if you let it. I heard wind in the trees bordering the lot, a loose rope on a flagpole clinking. Then I heard it far, or thin. I couldn't tell. Ding dong. Ding dong. Not Yuyake Koyake exactly, just the stripes of it, the bones of the melody without the skin. 2 notes, a pause, 2 notes again. It sounded like a test pattern for a tune. Cato cupped his ear. You've got it? Maybe, I said. It was the kind of sound that could be made by your memory if your memory was set just right. But dispatch had it too. Whatever we were hearing wasn't just in my head. We can't force entry into a city property without a reason. The chain and padlock were intact, no signs of damage, no footprints in the powder that had accumulated along the edge of the lot. We did the perimeter. The side gate by the bicycle lot was locked. The back service door near the kitchen had a sticker over its latch and dust undisturbed on the sill. A sheet of A4 was taped at eye level. Building closed. No entry. Contact Board of Education. While we walked, the radio ticked. 2. 1. The call has reached 5 minutes. It's still live. We can keep it up as long as it's open. If you think there's someone in distress on the grounds, we can request a caretaker attend. Copy, I said. I don't see signs of entry. We're going to take a look through the windows. The main building's entrance had 2 low benches where kids had sat and tied shoes. Beyond the glass, the vestibule had a table with a plastic pot plant still standing guard. The notice board carried last spring's flyer for the community dodgeball championship. The PA speaker up in the corner was the kind schools have everywhere, small, beige, a grill that looks like a waffle. Those PA systems, in my experience, live longer than anything else in a building. Their little scroll wheels hold onto schedules like superstition. We tried the side office window. Inside, desks had been stripped but not cleaned. A sun-faded calendar leaned against one monitor. It had a red circle on the 5th of the month and a note in thick marker, Closing Ceremony 14. The office telephone sat on its cradle, disconnected cord, coiled under like a resting snake. The line had been cut. I could see the copper ends, twisted and capped. Cato tilted his head toward the pole in the yard, with the small horns that broadcast the community alerts. The Bose speakers, he said. They're on a timer. Timer set for evening, I said. City kills the program at night. We both knew it. The daily chime stops by 6, unless someone is testing it. There had been no notice of a test. He nodded, and then pointed at the bolt pattern on the concrete where the payphone had been. Stand there a second. I did. The concrete seam was a rectangle 2 steps from the chain link. From that spot, you could see the vestibule straight on, and the horn speaker over the yard. When the wind gusted, the rope on the flagpole tapped the pole twice, pause, twice again. It made the same rhythm as the dim chime we had heard. Between the taps, if I wanted to, I could fit the rest of a song. The dispatcher came back on with something new in her voice. Not fear, not even surprise, just the admission that we were no longer in a purely clerical space. 2. 1. Call taker now reports the 2-note chime, followed by a single high-frequency pop, repeating at 30-second intervals. She can also hear your footsteps when you walk. Understood, I said. I looked at Cato, and he gave the little nod that means go on. Don't make a story where none belongs. We walked, and we looked. We used our torches to peer through the gym door's little windows. The gym floor was clean, lines shining where wax had been scrubbed in and then left. A stage sat at the far end, with a curtain drawn half. A big red Daruma doll leaned on a table, the kind you color one eye in for a wish and the other when it comes true. Only one eye was colored. I don't need a belief to feel the tug of a symbol like that. I put my ear to the metal of the post that held the public speaker. It hummed. Not with music, but with the long tone of something plugged in far away. A ground somewhere sharing its mood with a pole here. The control box below was padlocked. A little gray LCD window showed no digits. 2. 1. Dispatch said. We are going to terminate the call and attempt a callback to the originating number for records. Stand by. We waited. The wind nagged at a laminated sign and made it clatter. From inside the quiet of the school came the heavy receding tick of something bending and then straightening the roof, settling on its rafters. Then, gentle as a hand on a shoulder, the PA speaker in the vestibule popped once. There is a particular clean pop those systems make when a circuit closes. Then came Yuyake Koyake, not the whole thing, just the first measure, thin as if played from another room. It trailed and stopped like a tape caught under a finger. It did it again 30 seconds later, and then again. Cato and I stood without speaking. No one came to the door to peer out. No caretaker stepped from a shadow. The city was in its quiet part of harmony. Even the road beyond the houses held back a car for the duration. 2. 1. Our dispatcher again. We terminated the 110 line. Call ended at 2:16. We attempted callback to the number assigned to that payphone. We received, the number you have dialed is no longer in service. During the hold between attempts, we heard a children's song faintly. Our recording system captured it. Do you require a key holder? I had to choose the most basic action, the next right thing in a long chain of right things. Negative on key for now. We have no sign of forced entry, no person visible, no alarm triggered. We'll remain on scene for a few minutes to observe and then clear. Please notify the Board of Education in the morning to check the timer controls on the PA and confirm phone removal. Copy 2-1. That could have been the end. It would make a neat entry. Silent 110, no hazard found, notify city. But what happens from that point is why I remember the call more than some I've been to where things were objectively louder. At 2:23, while we were still there, the chime sounded a half measure again, then stopped. The wind slowed like a person catching their breath after a quiet run. In the pause that followed, I heard running water. Not the ocean, a pipe somewhere in the building, or the drain from a roof, a long pour and then a trickle. It lasted 20 seconds, then stopped. Nothing else. We were about to clear when the area loudspeakers, not just the schools but the neighborhood disaster speakers, all gave one pop in sequence like someone had pressed a test button and then changed their mind. They stayed quiet. Our radio gave a little burst of static we rarely get in that pocket. Dispatch came on with no reference to the burst. 2. 1. We've just received a second 110 from the same originating tag. Call taker reports the sound of a dial being rotated. No voice. A rotary dial. Those payphones used to have them. We hadn't heard one in years. You can reproduce that clicking sound by tapping a pen cap or by rolling a bead in a cup. But on the line, to a call center, it registers like a small storm that's trying to become a language. We're still on location, I said. No phone present. Nothing visible on the grounds. We'll stay for the duration of the call. The wind shifted. A cat moved in the shadow of the bike rack and froze when our torch crossed its back. The tone, 2 notes, repeated twice more from the vestibule speaker. Then the parking lot security light nearest the gate bumped on and back off, as if a walker were crossing it. We turned our lights that way. No one was there. The lot was empty except for a small pile of stones someone had stacked near the fence post. I had not seen that pile when we arrived. Maybe it was always there, and I only spotted it now because I was looking for anything. 2. 1, said dispatch softly. Call just ended. Duration 90 seconds. No callback possible. We are logging and will forward to the board. There is no staffing to send a caretaker at this hour. Understood, I said. We'll clear in a minute. Cato and I stood for one more long breath before we gave the place back to itself. I found myself unconsciously counting to 30 and waiting for the chime. Nothing came. The PA stayed silent. The wind went back to being something that belonged to trees and posters. We drove slow on the way back. The city at that hour wears its light like a shirt one size too big. On the car radio, the dispatcher pushed the ordinary jobs back across the map. Suspicious vehicle at the pier, noise from an apartment, a man who wanted to talk about his neighbor's hedges. The strange is never the whole night. I went home after shift and slept badly, which is unusual for me. Around 4 in the afternoon, the day after, we made the notice calls. The Board of Education's office lady said the timers for the PA had been disabled when the building closed. She would check the log. The rail that controls the speaker power had a main breaker. It had been taped down. The city's phone liaison said the payphone at the gate had been removed months ago. She read me the date, the work order number, the technician's initials. There was nothing left, she said, to report a fault on. 2 nights later, we were not assigned to that part of the district. In the middle of something else, the dispatcher put a note in our unit's message queue. For your info only. 110 call originating from Suganamori school payphone tag at 17:01 hours. Open line. Children singing. Clear audio of Yuyake Koyake. Community board also received calls about the chime sounding late. City confirmed no power to PA. Call duration 2-3 seconds. 17:01. The exact time the neighborhood chime would have played before the school closed. At that hour, the streets around the school would be full of kids in bright hats and parents pushing small bicycles. Now, it was a shortcut for office workers in dusty shoes, heads down. We asked to swing by Suginomori off patrol. The sun was low. A light wind chased rappers along the curb. Families were coming home. You can tell a neighborhood by how kids move at dusk. That night, they were calm and a little bored, which is a good thing. The gate at the school was as it had been. The bolts where the payphone had been were as they had been. No extra footprints in the dust. No signs that anyone had clambered in. A man with a dog paused and gave me a polite nod. "Is there a problem?" "Just making sure the locks are good," I said, which was true enough. He smiled with a small sadness. "My daughter went here," he said. "They had a song at 5. Now it's quiet. I still look up for it." "I do too. I still do." The board sent someone the following week to cut power fully to the school and to lock the breaker that fed the PA and the external speakers. They sent a memo to the communications center confirming removal of the payphone. The communications supervisor attached that memo to the CAD as a permanent note, so the system would stop suggesting a callback to a number that no longer existed. The calls from that tag slowed, then stopped. For a while, months later, I was at the Coben on a weekday when a woman came in to turn in a lost bicycle key. We did the form. While I wrote, the neighborhood speakers gave the afternoon chime, our usual one, clear and strong. It was 5 o'clock. People looked up instinctively. The woman smiled. "It makes you feel like you know what time it is," she said, as if it were a friend. As she left, the radio right above my desk popped once, and then settled. In the log, time-stamped against that pop, the CAD recorded a short 110 open line. Origin tag, Suginomori Elementary Public Phone, no such device on file. Audio, 2-note chime, 15 seconds. No voice. There are explanations. Public telephones have IDs that linger in systems. Timing circuits hold charge longer than anyone expects. Speakers hum when a transformer a kilometer away hiccups. Memory fills in gaps. I have told myself each of these things in the right order, and often they are enough. I am not telling you a ghost story. What I am telling you is that some places keep a shape after they're folded. The shape at Suginomori was simple. A 2-note chime. A payphone that was no longer there making a call it had made 1,000 times. Announcing the time. Asking in its way if anyone needed anything before they went home. We took a silent 110 inches the middle of the night and went to check a chain on a gate that didn't want anything from us. We listened while a school cleared its throat and remembered its own routine. We wrote it down and we left. When I drive that street now off duty and I pass that gate, I find my foot easing off the accelerator at 2 minutes past 5, even though the chime no longer plays and children have moved on to other roads. It's a habit, I suppose, listening for a thing that isn't there anymore. The dispatcher who worked that night told me later she saved the recording of the 2 notes. And sometimes, when the console is quiet and training is slow, she'll play it through her headset to remind new operators how an open line can be nothing and can still mean something. We don't always find a person. Sometimes we find a timing circuit asking us if we're awake. That's still our call. Story number 4. Most of my career's been nights along the South Coast, the stretch where the highway runs tight to the sea and then slips inland through black gums and dairy country. I'm a senior constable, partnered most of the time with Tully. You learn the sound of this place after midnight, the way the surf carries when there's no wind, the way roos thud off the verge just out of the light, the way truckies talk to each other on UHF 40 and leave gaps like commas so no one has to say too much. The jobs after 2 in the morning tend to be thin on people and thick on space. We were sitting at the servo near the industrial estate, lids off our coffees, when comms came up in our ear with that careful tone the call takers use for the ones they can't line up in a neat box. Bravo 23, are you available for a silent 000? Open line, no speech. Caller ID presents as a roadside emergency phone, Prince's Highway, Old Bridge lay-by at Cormorant Inlet. AML plot sits within 5 meters. Line's been up 3 minutes. Faint wind noise and intermittent alert tone. I looked at Tully. They pulled those phones years ago, he said, not arguing, just remembering out loud. Comms must have heard the thought. Telstra records indicate service ceased 2014, but the call's tagged to the old asset ID. You're nearest. We took it. Bravo 23, en route from Yallaru Road. 8 minutes depending on fog. We rolled out under low cloud. The highway there is 2 lanes each way with concrete barriers and a newer bridge that runs parallel to the old timber and steel thing locals still point at when they give directions. That old lay-by sits on the remnant of the original alignment bitumen cracked into a map of little islands. Guardrail leaning away like a tired man. Long ago there was an orange SOS box bolted near the end where you could lift a handset and speak to a recorded voice that would patch you through to help. It's all mobiles now, but a computer in a city somewhere still knew that box's number. As we came into the inlet cut, fog threw the headlights back on us like a soft hand. The new bridge's deck lights made a glowworm line through it. Out across the water, I could hear the long breath of surf on the bar and the break in it where the river mouth pushed. The lay-by appeared to the left, a darker patch in the fog. I eased the wagon in and let the engine tick to quiet. Comms. 2. 3 on scene at the old lay. By. Cormorant Inlet. Fog heavy. No people visible. Standing by for update. Copy. 2. 3. Line still open. Call taker reports a periodic tone. Single ping every 10 seconds. Sounds like a system alert. No human speech. We can hear wind. AML's not updating. It's holding at your location. I stepped out. The cold off the water took the warmth out of my uniform straight away. The lay-by was exactly as it had always been after they stopped maintaining it. One bin, lid missing. One streetlight with a housing full of dead bugs. A short step of concrete where the SOS phone had been bolted. The 4 bolt stubs in the concrete had little rust rings like spilled coffee. Someone had scrawled a heart on the old guardrail with a biro, the kind of half-joke you do when you don't know where else to put your nerves. Tully pointed at the ground where the phone had Saturday. There was a pit, he said. Telstra pit right there. He was right. The square cast iron cover had Telstra stamped on it, grime pooled in the letters. It looked like a thing that had not been lifted for a while. We stood still the way you do when you need your ears more than your eyes. The water moved in the dark under the new bridge and then under the old, which had been closed to traffic for years but still carried footings across the inlet like a memory of weight. From somewhere ahead, not loud, I heard the tone comms had mentioned. 1 plink, 10 seconds, another plink. Not a mobile sound, more like a device telling no one in particular that it was in a state and would continue to be. I keyed up. Comms, 2-3. We can hear a periodic alert tone on scene matching your description. Area foggy, no vehicles in the lay-by, nothing obvious in the water. We'll search around the old bridge access. Comms came back with the kind of detail that says the call taker's leaning in over her headset. Copy. Also, for your info, we have historical CAD for this asset 3 silent 000s in the last 5 years, all between 210 and 220, all tagged to the same roadside phone ID. Each time attending units found no persons. Telstra advised service ceased. Just so you have it, Tully and I took torches and went careful. The slope toward the old bridge was slick with the film the inlet leaves on everything. There was a service gate, padlocked, with a welded sign from Roads and Maritime that said, "No entry condemned structure." Through the mesh, the old span looked like a ribs cage. Egrets sometimes roost there in summer. Tonight, the fog had taken every edge off. We stood at the fence. The plink kept time, a metronome for a song that wasn't playing. It seemed to come from below and left, near where the footings sat in their collars. Tully angled his torch. Light caught railings, then slid off into water. "You reckon that's a buoy?" he asked. The inlet mouth had channel markers that pinged when seas came up. But this was inland from the mouth, and the sound wasn't carried by water. It felt like it came up through metal. "Comms," I said. "We're going to lift the Telstra pit cover up top and see if there's any active gear. No interference with service intended." "Approved," comms replied after that slight pause while they check what they're allowed to say yes to. Note: call still open, 19 minutes duration now. Call taker can hear your boots on gravel faintly. There's a clutch to lifting a pit cover that's more about will than strength. Thule got his fingers in the keyholes and eased it. It gave up with a little sigh of grit. Our torch beams found a junction old lines crimped and capped, a plastic box that might have been a surge protector. Nothing humming, nothing warm. It smelled like dirt and old paper. The plink came again, as patient as a drip. When it came, the surge protector's LED winked not on, exactly, more like a ghost of green. I leaned closer. The LED did it again on the next plink. Between those blinks, nothing. No steady power. I said it without thinking, because sometimes you say the obvious to make it something you can write. "We're hearing an alert tone. The only indicator here is winking at the same interval. No power source evident." I felt the silliness of being formal about a blinking light in a pit near midnight. but form is how you keep your feet. Copy, Com said, her voice as straight as ours. Call taker advises now hearing a very faint ring landline cadence behind the tone. She can hear someone breathing when you're quiet. We went quiet. I heard it too then, not loud enough to call a ring. More the shape of a ring. 2 bursts, a pause, repeat. The tone we'd been hearing tucked itself neatly into the spaces between. I picked the handset of my radio halfway to my mouth and then, like a person picking up an old home phone, said softly toward the pit instead, "Police. If you need help, call out." It's not doctrine. It's just something your mouth learns to do on a scene with no one in it. The ring phantom did not change. The plink kept time. Down by the old bridge, something moved in the water, a surface boil from a mullet or a bream. Tully glanced at me, and then at the condemned sign. "We could call Rhodes to open the gate," he said. "But we'll be here till light." He wasn't being lazy. He was telling me the calculus, what time we had, what else was out in the district waiting to be checked, how far you push an empty job into other people's rosters. I nodded. "We'll do a scan from the new bridge footpath," I said. "No one will thank us for trying to be heroes on the old one." We drove up onto the new span and parked on the verge with the beacons on low. The footpath gives you a clean sightline down the inlet. Fog pressed on us, but thinned enough in patches to make a ghostly map of the banks. The sound carried differently up there, clearer, but also thinner, like it had been stretched. The plink up there was a small tap. The ring ghost tucked in behind it. Between 2 lamps, our torches picked out the shell of the SOS phones mounting across on the lay-by like an empty sleeve. I keyed up to comms. 2, 3 on the new bridge footpath. Negative for persons in water visible from our position. Tone continues. "Any update your end?" The call taker patched through live, which they don't always do. Her voice is one you get used to in our patch calm, a lilt that softens hard edges. 2, 3. This is the Telstra operator on the 000 bridge. We can confirm the call is presenting from the asset number associated with that roadside phone. There is no subscriber service connected to it. The call came in at 0211 and has not dropped on our side. We hear your voices, occasionally, as room noise. We also hear a faint, looped message female voice, possibly recorded one word only, "Help." It's not clear whether this is a system tone or something ambient. Tully and I stood with the lamps buzzing. You can act like you don't feel a thing when you hear that, but your hands always give you away a little too still, or a fraction tighter on the rail. He said into the fog, not loud, "We've got you. We're here." The same way he talks to people who've called us because they've had an argument with sleep. "Comms," I said. "For records, can you check if there were crash jobs here around 2 a.m. over the last 10 years? We don't need details, just whether this asset's tagged to anything with people on it." There was a pause while a human sifted and a system tried to catch up to her. 2, 3. CAD shows multiple jobs on this stretch. The only one around that time was in 2012 single vehicle into the rail on the old bridge. No other units requested. Job closed by attending as RFS, handled cleanup in daylight. No further. She could have left it there, and she did, which I appreciated. We're not in the business of making an old sadness into a new one at 2 in the morning. We stayed a while longer because sometimes standing somewhere with a radio and a torch is all a person needs you to do whether or not they're there. The tone plinked. The ring ghost came and went, like low tide. The fog shifted and briefly showed the inlet skin exactly. Under the old bridge, a single crab pot float rocked to itself and then calmed. A truck moved over the new span and made the concrete sing. The world did what it does when everyone is asleep, and the few of us awake try to put names on sounds. Eventually, comms said, 2, 3. The line has terminated of its own accord. Total duration, 31 minutes. Callback attempted to asset number. Network responds, service not connected. We'll raise a ticket with Telstra. Do you require any other agency? Negative, I said. We'll secure what we can. Mark the pit as lifted and replaced. Notify RMS in the morning about the gate check. Clearing shortly. We went back down to the lay-by. I put my boot heel into the pit cover to make sure it was snug. Tully took a last look at the rust rings in the concrete and then out over the water. He has 3 kids and knows the exact sound of the sugar crash that comes after a show day at school. He also knows when to leave a thing alone. The paperwork reads dry because it has to. Attend silent, 000 at old roadside phone asset. Fog. Periodic alert tone audible. No persons located. No vehicles. Telstra and comms heard ring cadence and faint single-word vocalization consistent with looped system or ambient audio. Pit inspected. No active service observed. Notify RMS and Telstra. 2 days later, when the sun had a bit in it again, RMS sent a guy in an orange shirt to check the gate on the old bridge. He told our sergeant he found the padlock rusted in place. He also said, almost as an afterthought, that he'd heard a weird little chirp while he was there, thought it was a smoke alarm with a low battery, but he couldn't find one. He laughed about it over the counter and then stopped when he noticed no one else was laughing. He wrote his bid on his form and went back to his ute. A week after, comms put a note on the CAD that Telstra closed the fault ticket as no fault found. Legacy asset ID remained in emergency database. Removed. The calls stopped for a while. Then, 2 months later, on a hill shift when the air was so still you could hear a tractor over the ridge, comms came back up at 2:14 with a new silent 000. Same tag, same place. This time it lasted 9 minutes. No tone, just wind and surf. When we stood at the lay-by, the fog had taken the night off. The stars were like dust. We watched the inlet for a while. Nothing asked us for anything. There are ways to lay it all out so it fits. Phones that don't exist still have ghosts in the system. Old copper can throw voltage enough to wake a little bell. AML does a best guess when it has nothing to hold on to. Call takers hear our breath and our boots and build a story to go with them, because that's what brains do on long shifts. All true enough. What stays, though, isn't the file note or the clever bit. It's the feel of damp on your sleeves as you stand by a closed bridge, and a polite, patient tone keeps ticking like a heart someone set down and forgot to pick back up. It's a blank bit of concrete with 4 rusted bolt stubs where a person once stood in rain and wind and pressed a button and waited to hear a voice that would help them if they needed it. It's a network somewhere that hasn't been told, finally, that its job here is over. Sometimes I drive that way off duty. My wife likes the bakery in town. We come back over the new bridge with warm bread in a bag that steams the windows. I don't tell her much about nights, unless she asks. I glance left out of habit at the little patch where the lay-by is. If the tide's high, the inlet smooths into a mirror, and the old bridge's shadow looks like a line drawn with a ruler. If the wind's up, the water is a moving skin. It's always ordinary, until it isn't. One thing I've learned on nights is that not every call ends with us finding a person. Sometimes the job is to stand where a voice used to come from and say, "We're here," quietly, like you're covering a shift for an old mate who didn't clock off properly. Maybe some part of the system wires, databases, or just the way sound moves in fog needed that acknowledgement. Maybe we did. Story number 5. Most of my time in uniform has been on the night shift out of a small RCMP detachment that covers a long slice of highway through the interior of British Columbia. It's mostly rock cuts and lakes, a lot of crown land and logging spurs that vanish into black spruce. You learn the different kinds of quiet out here. The heavy quiet after fresh snow, the hollow quiet of a valley when the wind sits down, the almost electrical quiet when the temperature falls so fast it feels like the air itself is holding its breath. I like nights. I like the lanes to myself and the clean way a radio sounds at 3 in the morning. It was late February. The plows had been out earlier, leaving ridges as crisp as folded fabric at the shoulders. At 2:07, Ecom came across the air with a voice I knew, one of the call takers who keeps that even tone, even when she's being handed something strange. Car 21. Copy a 911 automatic crash notification. Caller is an automated system, no live person. Coordinates place you just north of mile 103, hairpin above Skookum Creek. Reported as severe crash detected by device. No further details. Fire and BCEHS standing by. Automatic crash notifications aren't unusual anymore. Phones and cars will call for you if they think you've hit something hard enough. Most of the time, they make sense: vehicle in a ditch, airbags deployed, or a driver in shock who can only manage a word or two. Sometimes they're false alarms. A drop device, an abrupt tow hook set down too hard. You don't know until you look. I took it with my partner Chan. 2. One en route from the weigh scales. ETA 8. depending on the hill. We rolled the light bar low not to wake anyone, mostly to keep the highway honest. The temperature read -15 on the dash. Our breath made little patches of cloud in the cab light, and then disappeared. I know that hairpin. Everybody local does. It's one of those corners that makes you religious about winter tires. The guardrail there has more patches than original, and there's a little wooden cross down in the V of trees where the bank angles faded ribbons. Nothing gross, just a reminder of how thin the margin is. Ecom pushed the details through the in-car terminal, and then in our ear again. Be advised, the automated system is playing an audio loop. This device detected a crash. The owner may be unresponsive. Background is wind noise only. The line is still live. Fire is rolling from town. BCEHS staging at the mile marker. Do you require SAR on standby? Negative for now, I said. We'll get eyes on first. There's a rhythm to a rural response. Everyone wants to help. Everyone knows there's only so much ladder truck you can move through the night without calling half the valley awake. We aimed the smallest tool that works. The hairpin came out of the dark like a question mark. We slowed, angled the car into the little plow turnout below the apex, and stepped out into a quiet that had weight. The snowplow had thrown a clean 2-foot wall along the edge. The bank beyond was unbroken. No fresh tracks, no debris. The guardrail looked old, not new. The small cross down the bank, the one with the ribbon, was half buried. The ribbon stiff with cold. Com. 2. 1 on scene, I said. No vehicle visible, no recent tracks, no debris. Snowpack continuous. We're going to do a slow walk around. Our boots squeaked in that dry snow way. Chan swept his light over the berm, up the rail, down the bank. You get used to picking up the small wrongnesses, shadows that suggest a shape under the snow, a heat haze from an engine, the way silence changes if something big is hiding in it. We got none of that. Just the night and the kind of still your bones like. Copy 2, 1, the call. Taker said. The line is still active. Background audio changed now, hearing a rhythmic clicking under the wind. Could be hazard lights. No speech. Caller ID is device-based. No phone number to call back. And end. 2. Hazard lights make a sound inside a car like a clock that isn't in a hurry. Tick-tock. Tick-tock. If they were clicking, I wanted to hear them. We stopped moving and went very quiet. The only clicks were the tiny noises snow makes when it settles, a crystalline sigh, and somewhere in the trees, a bird shifting in sleep. Chan climbed onto the berm and leaned over the rail, careful of his footing. I'm not seeing tracks, he said, not even old ones. If a plow put this berm in after a crash, we'd see a wall of debris frozen into it. It's clean. Comms, I said. Can you confirm the coordinate confidence? Affirm. High confidence. Plot puts it within 3 meters of your location. Device reports rollover detected. Time flagged as 2 hours, 7 minutes, and 12 seconds. I looked at my watch. 2:12 now. If something had rolled over, it hadn't touched the snow. I walked the shoulder 50 meters in both directions, letting my light ride the guardrail, checking for fresh scrapes, plastic, anything. Nothing. The wind came down the valley in a slow, honest way and touched my ears through the hat the way cold will. Fire pulled up at the bottom of the hill and staged, their chief's pickup idling under a diesel breath. He walked up with his torch tucked down, not wanting to drown our night vision. Anything? We've got a call from a device that thinks it crashed, I said. No vehicle visible, no debris, no tracks. You guys willing to sit tight while we check the lower turnout? If anything went off, it would have to leave some sign. He nodded, used to the idea that sometimes his job is to wait in the dark with us and let the highway decide. We rolled down to the next turnout below the hairpin, where the slope is gentler. Same story. Clean snow pushed by a plow, no brakes. No vehicle in the trees. No steam. No smell. In summer, you'd cut your eyes to the ditch for a scuff of rubber. In winter, you look for a ripple in the surface of snow, where something big has pressed. Ecom came back on, a different operator now, same tone. Update for 2. 1. The automated call is still active. We're now also getting a second automated source, same phrasing. Different device identifier flagging a severe crash at the same coordinates, 5 minutes offset. No voice. Do you have more than one scene? Chan and I looked at each other. Say again, second device? I asked. Affirmative, she said. 2 separate devices initiated 911 within 60 seconds of each other. Both report severe impact. Possible rollover. No human response. Background audio, on both loops, is wind. One line gives a faint tone every half second, like a hazard flasher. The other has a chime consistent with vehicle door open. Both show your coordinates. It's not unheard of. 2 phones in one car will both call if they're set to. But we didn't have a car. We had a corner trying to tell us something without making a mark on the world. I walked back up to the hairpin on foot while Chan checked the logging spur 100 meters south with the truck. I took my time, letting the night into my head so it could tell me if I was missing something. Past the apex, where you can see down into the V of the trees, I cupped my hands around my ears and leaned out over the rail. Then, up from the trees, not from the road, came a faint, regular tick-tick-tick, too steady to be a branch, too mechanical to be ice. I moved my hands. The sound vanished. I cupped again. Tick-tick-tick, not loud, not close. But there. Chan, I said on the shoulder mic. I'm getting a faint tick below the apex. Could be a sound echo. I can't see anything. Check your angle from the spur. He came back a minute later. Negative from here. Just dark on dark. No heat signatures, nothing obvious. Comms, I said. We're going to request Highways bring a loader to push this berm back so we can visually confirm the bank. It'll take time. It understood, Ecom said. We'll page them. Do you require SAR to stand by? Hold them, I said. No indication of persons at this time. Fire's thermal camera didn't see anything. The chief scanned as far as he could reach with the camera fully zoomed before the cold started to fog the lens. If there's a car down there, it's buried or cold, he said. He's done this longer than I have. He doesn't guess in public. We decided to wait for Highways. There's a patience to this job that is its own skill. We set cones up top, let the grade breathe, and stood where we could hear the night. Ecom ran our loop in the background, operators taking turns, keeping the automated lines pinned open. The recordings would be attached to the file later. That's the way of it now. In the moment, it was just us and the tick when I cupped my ears just so. At 2:31, Ecom said, "For your awareness, we're receiving a verbal on one of the lines. Male voice, very faint. We can't make out the words. It could be a recorded message interfering." "Do you copy any voice near you?" Chan keyed up. "Negative. Just us and fire. No one else in the area." The operator played us a loop through the car's speaker, not typical, but she wanted us to know we weren't missing a live person. It was the automated voice, clear, because it's designed to be, and beneath it, something like a human syllable sliding out of shape, like a voice off a radio station you can't quite tune. I could have made it into any word if I wanted. Highways arrived at 3-2, a loader breathing like a bull in cold air. He pushed the berm down and away, careful, experienced, making the neat kind of mess only a professional can make. Under the pushed snow was more snow, hard pack, old layers, no gouge marks, no yellow from lights, no plastic confetti. We peered down the bank with our lights, and it looked back at us with the indifference of 1,000 trees. The loader man scratched his beard through his balaclava and shrugged like the mountain had refused us politely. "If anything went over in the last week, you'd smell it," he said. "It's clean." We stood there while the automated lines were still live, the device somewhere telling our dispatcher that it had experienced a force that triggered a protocol. And we looked at a bank that had no knowledge of that. At 3:14, Ecom said, "Lines have terminated. Total duration for first, 67 minutes. Second, 42 minutes. We have recordings. BCEHS clearing, pending your status." "Copy," I said. "We'll be clear once we reseat the berm. No scene located." The paperwork later read like a conservative memo. Attended automatic crash notifications. Thorough search found no vehicle, no debris, no track evidence. Highways cleared berm down to old pack. Negative signs. Fire and BCEHS staged. Negative assistance required. Automated audio, recorded wind, and electronic clicking, consistent with hazard or device chime. Lines terminated spontaneously, no further. It should have ended there. 3 nights later, at exactly 2:07 again, ECOM hit us with another automatic crash from the same coordinate. Same language, same tone. We rolled without lights this time, just to prove to ourselves that the world would behave. The corner sat in the moonlight looking like a photograph of itself. We stepped out, went quiet, and there it was again. Tick, tick, tick if I cupped my hands to the draw and stole the sound up from the trees. ECOM, I asked, what's the timestamp on your lines? 2 hours, 7 minutes and 12 seconds for the first. 2 hours, 12 minutes and 4 seconds for the second, she said. I told her my watch read exactly, even to the second. It was a small thing. It felt like someone had placed it on a desk between us. We stayed longer that second night. I watched the temperature drop on the dash a half degree at a time. A wolf called out on the other side of the creek, in a voice that sounded like it had been poured from a jar. Chan poured coffee that had gone beyond strong, and was now just a taste you accept. We listened to the automated voice tell us politely that someone could be hurt where no one was. After that second run, I did the thing you do when reality gives you a polite contradiction: you pull old files. I ran the corner's mile marker through CAD and picked up a cluster of ordinary work. Deer strikes, a jackknifed truck in 19, a fuel spill in 16, a tire that came off and went into the trees like a shot. The cross with the ribbon was from a single vehicle in 11. Nothing at 0207. Nothing that lined up like a teaching moment. A week later, on a daytime shift, I ran into one of the BCEHS paramedics in line at the Tims. He saw my name and asked about the hairpin. You still getting those robot calls? 2 of them, same time. He nodded toward his partner stirring sugar. We've had the same thing. Our console gets the automated line and marks it pending. No one shows. We mark it no patient contact. The call still logs as a crash. Then it repeats exactly a few nights later. It's like the mountain is sending in its own paperwork. ECOM filed a ticket with the device manufacturer through whatever back channel they use for this stuff. The answer came back the way those answers do: polite, caveated, plausible. The device has a threshold. False positives happen. Rapid deceleration can be simulated by a dropped phone or a device sitting on a vibrating, Taker said. The line is still active. Background audio changed now, hearing a rhythmic clicking under the wind. Could be hazard lights. No speech. Caller ID is device-based. No phone number to call back. And end. 2. Hazard lights make a sound inside a car like a clock that isn't in a hurry. Tick-tock. Tick-tock. If they were clicking, I wanted to hear them. We stopped moving and went very quiet. The only clicks were the tiny noises snow makes when it settles, a crystalline sigh, and somewhere in the trees, a bird shifting in sleep. Chan climbed onto the berm and leaned over the rail, careful of his footing. I'm not seeing tracks, he said, not even old ones. If a plow put this berm in after a crash, we'd see a wall of debris frozen into it. It's clean. Comms, I said. Can you confirm the coordinate confidence? Affirm. High confidence. Plot puts it within 3 meters of your location. Device reports rollover detected. Time flagged as 2 hours, 7 minutes and 12 seconds. I looked at my watch. 2:12 now. If something had rolled over, it hadn't touched the snow. I walked the shoulder 50 meters in both directions, letting my light ride the guardrail, checking for fresh scrapes, plastic, anything. Nothing. The wind came down the valley in a slow, honest way and touched my ears through the hat the way cold will. Fire pulled up at the bottom of the hill and staged, their chief's pickup idling under a diesel breath. He walked up with his torch tucked down, not wanting to drown our night vision. Anything? We've got a call from a device that thinks it crashed, I said. No vehicle visible, no debris, no tracks. You guys willing to sit tight while we check the lower turnout? If anything went off, it would have to leave some sign. He nodded. used to the idea that sometimes his job is to wait in the dark with us and let the highway decide. We rolled down to the next turnout below the hairpin, where the slope is gentler. Same story. Clean snow pushed by a plow, no brakes. No vehicle in the trees. No steam. No smell. In summer, you'd cut your eyes to the ditch for a scuff of rubber. In winter, you look for a ripple in the surface of snow, where something big has pressed. ECOM came back on, a different operator now, same tone. Update for 2.1. The automated call is still active. We're now also getting a second automated source, same phrasing. Different device identifier flagging a severe crash at the same coordinates, 5 minutes offset. No voice. Do you have more than one scene? Chan and I looked at each other. Say again, second device? I asked. Affirmative, she said. 2 separate devices initiated 911 within 60 seconds of each other. Both report severe impact. Possible rollover. No human response. Background audio, on both loops, is wind. One line gives a faint tone every half second, like a hazard flasher. The other has a chime consistent with vehicle door open. Both show your coordinates. It's not unheard of. 2 phones in one car will both call if they're set to. But we didn't have a car. We had a corner trying to tell us something without making a mark on the world. I walked back up to the hairpin on foot while Chan checked the logging spur 100 meters south with the truck. I took my time, letting the night into my head so it could tell me if I was missing something. Past the apex, where you can see down into the V of the trees, I cupped my hands around my ears and leaned out over the rail. Then, up from the trees, not from the road, came a faint, regular tick-tick-tick, too steady to be a branch, too mechanical to be ice. I moved my hands. The sound vanished. I cupped again. Tick-tick-tick, not loud, not close. But there. Chan, I said on the shoulder mic. I'm getting a faint tick below the apex. Could be a sound echo. I can't see anything. Check your angle from the spur. He came back a minute later. Negative from here. Just dark on dark. No heat signatures, nothing obvious. Comms, I said. We're going to request highways bring a loader to push this berm back so we can visually confirm the bank. It'll take time. It understood, ECOM said. We'll page them. Do you require SAR to stand by? Hold them, I said. No indication of persons at this time. Fire's thermal camera didn't see anything. The chief scanned as far as he could reach with the camera fully zoomed before the cold started to fog the lens. If there's a car down there, it's buried or cold, he said. He's done this longer than I have. He doesn't guess in public. We decided to wait for highways. There's a patience to this job that is its own skill. We set cones up top, let the grade breathe, and stood where we could hear the night. ECOM ran our loop in the background, operators taking turns, keeping the automated lines pinned open. The recordings would be attached to the file later. That's the way of it now. In the moment, it was just us and the tick when I cupped my ears just so. At 2:31, ECOM said, "For your awareness, we're receiving a verbal on one of the lines. Male voice, very faint. We can't make out the words. It could be a recorded message interfering. Do you copy any voice near you?" Chan keyed up. Negative. Just us and fire. No one else in the area. The operator played us a loop through the car's speaker, not typical, but she wanted us to know we weren't missing a live person. It was the automated voice, clear, because it's designed to be, and beneath it, something like a human syllable sliding out of shape, like a voice off a radio station you can't quite tune. I could have made it into any word if I wanted. Highways arrived at 3-2, a loader breathing like a bull in cold air. He pushed the berm down and away, careful, experienced, making the neat kind of mess only a professional can make. Under the pushed snow was more snow, hard pack, old layers, no gouge marks, no yellow from lights, no plastic confetti. We peered down the bank with our lights, and it looked back at us with the indifference of 1,000 trees. The loader man scratched his beard through his balaclava and shrugged like the mountain had refused us politely. "If anything went over in the last week, you'd smell it," he said. "It's clean." We stood there while the automated lines were still live, the device somewhere telling our dispatcher that it had experienced a force that triggered a protocol. And we looked at a bank that had no knowledge of that. At 3:14, Ecom said, "Lines have terminated. Total duration for first, 67 minutes. Second, 42 minutes. We have recordings. BCEHS clearing, pending your status." "Copy," I said. "We'll be clear once we reseat the berm. No scene located." The paperwork later read like a conservative memo. Attended automatic crash notifications. Thorough search found no vehicle, no debris, no track evidence. Highways cleared, berm down to Old Pack. Negative signs. Fire and BCEHS staged. Negative assistance required. Automated audio, recorded wind, and electronic clicking, consistent with hazard or device chime. Lines terminated spontaneously, no further. It should have ended there. 3 nights later, at exactly 2:07 again, Ecom hit us with another automatic crash from the same coordinate. Same language, same tone. We rolled without lights this time, just to prove to ourselves that the world would behave. The corner sat in the moonlight looking like a photograph of itself. We stepped out, went quiet, and there it was again. Tick, tick, tick if I cupped my hands to the draw and stole the sound up from the trees. "Ecom," I asked, "what's the timestamp on your lines?" 2 hours, 7 minutes, and 12 seconds for the first. 2 hours, 12 minutes, and 4 seconds for the second, she said. I told her my watch read exactly, even to the second. It was a small thing. It felt like someone had placed it on a desk between us. We stayed longer that second night. I watched the temperature drop on the dash a half degree at a time. A wolf called out on the other side of the creek, in a voice that sounded like it had been poured from a jar. Chan poured coffee that had gone beyond strong, and was now just a taste you accept. We listened to the automated voice tell us politely that someone could be hurt where no one was. After that second run, I did the thing you do when reality gives you a polite contradiction: you pull old files. I ran the corner's mile marker through CAD, and picked up a cluster of ordinary work. Deer strikes, a jackknifed truck in 19, a fuel spill in 16, a tire that came off and went into the trees like a shot. The cross with the ribbon was from a single vehicle in 11. Nothing at 02:07. Nothing that lined up like a teaching moment. A week later, on a daytime shift, I ran into one of the BCEHS paramedics in line at the Tim's. He saw my name and asked about the hairpin. "You still getting those robot calls?" "2 of them, same time." He nodded toward his partner stirring sugar. "We've had the same thing. Our console gets the automated line and marks it pending. No one shows. We mark it no patient contact. The call still logs as a crash. Then it repeats exactly a few nights later. It's like the mountain is sending in its own paperwork." Ecom filed a ticket with the device manufacturer through whatever back channel they use for this stuff. The answer came back the way those answers do: polite, caveated, plausible. The device has a threshold. False positives happen. Rapid deceleration can be simulated by a dropped phone or a device sitting on a vibrating surface. The cell tower might mislocate in low signal areas. The phone might backfill the GPS with a cached coordinate. Everything they said was true. It also didn't look like what was in front of me. Spring came. The berms melted down to gray, then vanished. The cross at the bank got its ribbon replaced. Someone loved whoever had been gone and was keeping the ritual. The calls stopped for a while. The corner went back to being a corner that punished bad tires and rewarded patience. Then, in June, at 2:07, Ecom sent the third. Summer version. Same language. Same coordinates. No snow to hide anything this time. We drove it like a drill. We pulled in at the apex. We got out. The night had warm breath now, and smelled like wet rock. If anything went off the road in summer, the ferns keep the secret only until the first rain. No broken fronds. No scraped bark. The creek below sounded bored in a peaceful way. This time, the operator did something small that stuck with me. She patched through the automated message to us again. But at the end of the loop, there was a tiny delay before it repeated. And in that delay, sound from the device broke through the faintest shuffling, a soft two-tone chime like when a car door is open with the key in the ignition. That would have made sense if we had a car. We had the edge of a hill and the end of a ribbon fluttering in a breeze that wasn't there. We cleared it the same way. Negative scene. Negative persons. We sent the file on, and didn't give it to the part of our brains that wants to build a story out of two pieces in air. By fall, our detachment had 3 new constables. You can tell the ones who'll do well by how they listen. One of them, a woman from the East Coast, rode with me on a Friday, and we went by the hairpin without a job attached to it. She asked me why I slowed a little. I told her, then I didn't. The radio spared me by breathing into our ears with a shop alarm that was likely wind messing with a loose door. Near Christmas, on a night where snow returned in sheets and made the highway a moving hallway, the calls came again, 2 in quick sequence, polite as ever. We were already in the area. Fire was running a chimney fire 5 kilometers up, so it was just us. I had the sense, as we stepped out at the apex again, of a place practicing something, like a piece of music running through scales. The tick in the draw kept time. The automated voice kept its measured cadence. The wind lifted snow from the plow lines and set it back down, as if to teach it where to sit. The last entry on that file is as plain as the first. Attended, negative for collision. Automated system error likely. No further. That's what went to the database and would be read by anyone in the future who wanted to know if we did our job. And we did. We went. We looked. We waited. We listened. We logged. We left. If you want the explainers, they're easy to line up like cones. Device false positives, transient tower misroutes, GPS drift, ghost calls in the network, human pattern, seeking on a long shift. I've used all those explanations myself to tuck a stubborn corner of a night into a drawer so I can sleep. All true. But truth has layers. And sometimes the top layer is the one that lets you get home. What stays with me isn't a ghost car or a voice in the trees. It's the politeness of the loop. The way the device and whatever dark it was talking into kept asking for the same thing at the same time in the same place, as if the mountain had written itself a reminder and set an alarm it couldn't turn off. It's the feeling of standing by a guardrail with my breath making clouds and saying, out loud to nobody, because sometimes nobody is who needs to hear it. RCMP's here. If you need us, we're not going anywhere. Some nights the radio is busy enough that you ride the noise until dawn and then it's over. Some nights the quiet is its own weather system, and you're just a person in a parka moving through it with a flashlight and a routine. I still slow by that hairpin on winter nights, not to look for anything, just to listen for that faint tick in the draw. If I cup my hands just so, sometimes I hear it. Maybe it's ice. Maybe it's a branch. Maybe it's a sound moved by the valley that our devices are convinced they should answer with a call. Either way, I answer back. Because that's the whole job some nights, saying we're here to the part of the world that's practicing the words help in case it ever needs them. Story number 6. Most of my service has been in uniform out of a coastal station in the west. A patch where the road thins to single lane with grass down the middle and the sea is something you hear even when you can't see it. Nights there aren't empty. They're a chorus that never raises its voice, wind over the bog, cattle shifting, a distant dog deciding between a bark and sleep, the slow blink of the lighthouse 5 miles offshore. You get good at telling the difference between that and anything that might be a person who needs you. At 2:19, control and command came up on the air, with that even tone they use when there's no tidy box to put a thing in. Tango 1-4, copy a 999 open line. AML shows a point by the car park at Carrick Head end of the Boreen, near the old signal tower. No voice. Line's been up 2 minutes. Background is wind and a repetitive tone. Are you free? I glanced at O'Rourke, my partner. He was pouring tea out of a flask that always tasted faintly of diesel no matter how many times he scrubbed it. He clicked the lid back on and nodded. We'll take it, I told C&C. Eat a 10 depending on sheep. Copy Tango 1-4. For info, the number is withheld. It's presenting as an unknown device on our side. We've paged Coast Guard for awareness, given your location. Carrick Head is one of those places with a road built by someone who wasn't thinking about patrol cars or ambulances. It runs past a handful of bungalows, then it gives up and becomes a strip of tarmac that thinks highly of itself. At the very end is a pocket-sized car park with a council sign that tells you not to camp, not to light fires, and to bring your litter home because no one will come for it. Above it on a low rise is an 1800s signal tower stone walls. No roof, just a square of history that used to pass messages from headland to headland, long before phones made it easy to call strangers. In summer, there's a steady trickle of walkers. In winter, only the sea goes. We rolled up with the beacons turned down low so the light didn't bounce off the fog and blind us. The car park was empty. The council bin held half a bag of chip paper braced with a stone, as if someone cared enough to keep it there until the next collection. The wind had that low, steady push to it, not a scream. We cut the engine and listened. The tone was there, if you wanted to hear it, a little electronic chirp every few seconds. Not loud enough to be coming from a car. Not anything you could immediately point to. The kind of sound you could put your hand out for and never quite touch. It sat under the wind like a polite cough in a quiet room. C and C, Tango 1, 4 on scene, I said. Car park at Carrick Head empty. No vehicles, no persons visible. Tone audible as described. We'll have a look. Coast Guard to be advised we've nothing in the waterline from here. Received, she said. Coast Guard Valencia have the note. Line is still open. Call taker reports tone at 3-second intervals, no speech. She can hear your car door. O'Rourke swept his torch around the edges of the tarmac. If there'd been a vehicle recently, we'd see tracks or somebody's sand stuck in a tire tread. It had rained earlier, so any tracks would have written themselves bright. Nothing. We walked up the little slope to the signal tower. The grass was slick. A rabbit decided on panic, and then changed its mind and sank back into itself. The tower stood the way old things do, unimpressed with us. At the base of the tower is a little plaque about semaphore and wars, and the view you get on a good day. The view now was black, and a line of white where the sea shouldered the rocks. I put my hand on the stone because stone is honest. It held the day's cold like a bank. The tone was clearer here. Chirp. 3 seconds. Chirp. There was another sound with it if you let your ear unfocus. The soft, 2 beat of something like a bell buoy a mile off. That shouldn't be audible from this side of the head, but sound moves strangely at night. The air flattens and carries things like a tray. Can you hear that? I asked O'Rourke. I can convince myself I can, he said. He's a good partner. He'll tell you when he knows, and when he doesn't. Sounds like a life ring light with a dying battery, he added, and then gestured at the emergency ring on a pole by the car park. We walked back down. The ring was in its housing, rope neatly coiled, light intact. No one had meddled with it. We popped it out, checked the lamp fresh enough. We clipped it back in. The tone didn't change. C and C, O'Rourke said into his shoulder. Do you have any more on the line? Negative, she said. Open line, background only. We're marking location as your GPS. The original AML fix was 5 meters east of you, on the cliff path. No callback possible. We can maintain until the line drops. I took the torch and did the path to the point carefully. The council has a chain across it with a sign that says, Stay, back from the edge, even though you already know. The ground squished where it should have been firm. A cow had wandered earlier and left a memory of itself. 100 meters out, there's a single pole with a little metal box on it, a weather station the council put in for some reason and then forgot to download the data from. I put my ear to it. Sometimes those units beep. This one was a dead thing. The tone still sat at the edge of hearing, not tied to any one place. O'Rourke stayed near the car and kept an eye on the road. We have learned to assume that anyone can arrive anywhere at any time needing anything. He flashed me when a pair of lights topped the hill and paused. It was one of the fishermen from the next bay coming home late. He gave us a little salute and kept going. Valencia to any units at Carrick Head. The Coast Guard broke onto our channel in a way they don't often unless asked. We're showing no EPIRBs or PLBs active in your area. No VHF traffic on 16. We've had no missing person calls. We're standing by if you need a look. Negative for now, I said. No visual. Please hold. We'll call if we want a light on the water. The line in my ear popped faintly, the way a landline does when you pick it up and put it down. Tango 1. 4. C and C said. Call taker. Now report something that sounds like a recorded message under the wind female voice. One word repeated. It may be artifact. She can't make the word. I walked back to the car and asked to hear a clip. C and C patched a few seconds through to our in-car. It was mostly wind, a mechanical chirp, and then a tiny syllable that could have been help, Could have been hello. Could have been a gull far away saying its one syllable over and over. The brain offers shapes to fill gaps. That's its kindness and its trick. Do we have a number? I asked. Negative, she said. It's not presenting in a way we can dial back. We've logged the CID as unknown device. The system thinks it's something like a smartwatch or a car e-call unit, but there's no metadata. I looked at O'Rourke. Holiday lets along the lane? I asked. He nodded. There are 4 houses near the top that belong to people from away. In summer you see their cars, and boards on the roof for the kids. In winter, blinds sit down like lids. We locked up the car park and took the lane slow, torches and eyes, listening for the tone to grow or go thin. It didn't change. Number 1 has a sensor light that wakes up for foxes. It blinked and held us in a cone like interrogators. The house was dark behind drawn blinds. Number 2 had a car in the drive and a damp towel over the back of a chair on the porch. We knocked. A man with hair at heroic angles opened in a dressing gown and blinked in the torch. Everything okay, guard? Sorry to bother, I said, and meant it. We're following up an emergency call. Did you call us? He smiled like a man being given an alibi. No, we don't get a signal inside the house anyway. You know that. We thanked him and moved on. Number 3 and 4 were wintered bins as clean as a postcard, posts stuck under the mat to make it look like someone came. I stepped off the lane into the verge and listened again. The tone sat where it had sat before part of the night now, not a place. We went back to the car park and stood a few more minutes, because sometimes standing is the work. C&C said. The lines dropped. Duration 6 minutes, 42 seconds. No callback possible. We're logging. Coast Guard have stood down pending any further. Do you require anything else? Negative. We'll remain 5 and then clear. We stuck around long enough to convince ourselves the tone was in our heads. On the drive back, the boreen felt longer than usual. A sheep thought about stepping into our bumper and then decided to live. I wrote the entry as it happened. 999, open line. AML, Carrick Head. No person located. Audio was wind and repeating electronic tone. Coast Guard aware. No scene. 2 nights later, again at roughly the same time, we were at the far end of our patch when C&C threw another open line at Carrick Head into our MDT. Different call taker, same wording. No voice, wind and repeated tone. We were already pointed that way, so we rolled. Same empty car park, same steady ocean, same chirp under the wind if you let yourself hear it. We started asking around in the sensible hours. The council's coastal officer made a face and said the weather station's dead, and he's been meaning to get to it for a year. The signal tower isn't anyone's problem. The lighthouse service said their gear was right as rain. Valentia shrugged with their voice and said no beacons, no maydays, nothing on their radar but fishing boats doing fishing. Air said there's no public phone anywhere near there anymore, not even a ghost of one. All of that is true and useful, and none of it tells you what a tone is. A week later, the call came at a different time, 1702. Someone else would have taken it in the day, but it popped on our unit anyway, as in for your information. The notes later said, children's voices faint, like a playground, then wind, then tone. There's no playground near Carrick Head, just gorse and rock, and a view that makes you think of postcards. Sound moves at sea the way fog moves on land. It finds you, and it doesn't owe you a map of how. We kept it on our sheet, as one of those things we pass to each other at shift change. Mind Carrick Head, the calls, nothing found. It became a talisman against the kind of certainty that will get you hurt. The certainty that if you don't see it, it isn't there. The bit that dug its way into me came a month later on a night as clear as glass. No fog. Stars like filings on a magnet. We weren't near Carrick Head. We were in the next town over, called to a neighbor dispute so mild it felt like an apology. C&C came on with a tone in her voice. You only hear when she's trying not to sound like she's added a weight to your pocket. Tango 1-4. For your awareness, we've had another 999 from the Carrick Head AML spot. This time, we can hear 2 sets of footsteps on gravel and your call signs in the background. Timestamp shows 2:21. You're at a different location. We know that. We're just passing it. "Thanks," I said, and didn't say anything else. We'd been there with the tone. We'd walked. We'd said, "Gardei, anybody there?" The way you say it when you want your voice to reassure and gather. Hearing yourself later on a call you didn't make at a place you weren't would sit in your head and try to write a story. The trick, and it is a trick some nights, is to let it write only the bit that helps. We got one more in high summer in a gale, the kind that slaps the sea silly and makes the sheep lean. Valencia asked if we wanted the lifeboat to do a courtesy run by the head. We did, and they did. And there was nothing. The crew could hear our radio in the background of the 999, could hear the wind, could hear the chirp. The helm later said on the pier with a paper cup of bad coffee between his hands that sometimes the coast is like a mirror that hasn't decided what to show you yet, and he laughed at himself before we could. If you want reasons that won't keep you awake, I can line them up and use them. Some devices dial 999 by accident. A dropped phone in a car can ping a mast weirdly and send AML to the nearest mapped point that isn't real. The call taker's headset can pick up our radio on bleed over, and the recording will marry the two. Life ring lights chirp when their batteries are low. The wind will carry that a long way. The council weather station could be coughing its last. People say hello and it sounds like help. All of that can be true in any combination you want it in. On the other hand, we had a headland that used to pass messages on windy nights with flags and lamplight, a council pole humming a useless hum, a tone behaving itself with the kind of patience electronics don't usually have, and a system that kept ringing us politely to come and stand where no one was. We did. We stood. We listened. We put our names in the book. To say we'd been. A year on, Carrick Head still sometimes shows up on our screens. Not every week. Enough to be a chapter. I'm on days more now, and I'll still pull into that little car park in the bright and park with the window down and eat a sandwich with my head full of night shapes. The signal tower makes a square on the sky like it's drawing attention to it. The sea does the work it always does. The chirp, if it's there, is drowned by gulls and families who forget to put their rubbish in the bin we check. The last time I was there at night was because of a different job entirely, a car alarm on the lane that wasn't anything. I shut the bonnet and let the night have me for a minute because it's good for you to be small sometimes. Down the slope, the life ring's little lamp blinked because a council test knocked it. The blink had a tempo. My brain tried to match it to the old call. I said out loud, because sometimes nobody is who needs to hear it. Gardai are here, and it felt like the right way to end a thought. Will I tell you I heard the tone again? Of course I did. Will I tell you I could prove it came from anything other than the way sound sits on a headland at 2 a.m? No, I can't. And I don't need to. Most of the job is showing up and letting a place know somebody's watching the same bit of horizon it is. Phones are tools. Calls are wires between two people that sometimes catch other things. If there was a person at the end of any of those open lines, they never made themselves known. If there was only wind and a council box and my certainty trying to put on a coat, well, we gave them the courtesy of our time, and I can live with that. Story number 7. Most of my years on nights were spent working a city that's half river and half railway, the kind where trams whisper through intersections after midnight, and you can smell yesterday's bread from the back door of a bakery at 2 a.m. When the shops are shuttered and the buses run on half-hour patience, you notice the small noises. The overhead lines singing a thin note in cold air, a bicycle bell struck for no one, the late train's brakes sighing on a curve you can't see. You get good at telling the difference between a machine doing what it's built to do and a human needing something. It was a Tuesday deep in winter, streets slick with freezing drizzle that made the cobbles look like they'd been polished by a giant thumb. At 0:43, Lightstell came up on the air with that contained tone dispatchers have when their headset has just handed them something that doesn't sit neat on the console. Streifen 3 bis 21, 3 bis 24, kommen for a Notruf 110. Open line. Originating device appears to be an elevator emergency intercom. U-Bahn station Hohenzollernplatz. Lower concourse. Line is active. No speech. Open 3 minutes. Station closed for renovation access via west entrance only. Stadtwerke notified. I was 3 to 21. My partner Fink was in the passenger seat writing up a noise complaint that was more apology than offense. He looked up from his pen. Hohenzollernplatz is still shut? Month 6, I said, watching the drizzle streak our windscreen. The station had been taken down to concrete for a full refit, tiles stripped, escalators wrapped, daylit hoardings that promised a bright new future in tasteful sans serif. At night, it was dead space under a block of very quiet flats. The elevators were off. The power to the platforms was supposed to be off too, except for safety. Lightstell added, as if she'd read my face. Zur Info. Statwork Control confirms no passenger operations, no trains scheduled through Hohenzollernplatz. They can't explain the intercom call. Bundespolizei informed. You're nearest. We took it. 3 to 21. Aufnahme. Etwa 5 minutes if the lights play nice. We rolled out. The city just after midnight in winter is a series of small, sharp scenes. A taxi idling in a bus lane, a pedestrian crossing blinking its amber lonely, a fox stepping off a curb like it owns it. We ghosted past them and into the square where the station sat under scaffolding and banners of a construction firm that had started to feel like your neighbor. The west entrance was a plywood doorway under a triangle of scaffolding. A chain had been looped through its handles and padlocked. But a city key would undo that decorum. We parked a little off, nose out, the way you do when you don't know how long you'll want to stay. Leitstelle 3 bis 21 am Einsatzort Hohenzollernplatz West. Zugang gesichert. No visible persons. Stand by. Copy. 3 to 21. The line is still open. Call taker hears a repeating tone, 2 notes, about every 30 seconds. She also hears movement, could be ventilation. No voice. Elevator intercoms everywhere have a particular politeness about them. They're built to stay calm, even when the human pressing the button isn't. I could hear it too when I stood near the doorway and let the city fall away, the faint, clipped beep of a system waiting to be acknowledged. Then a tiny pause, not loud enough to come from street level. Not something a passerby could have activated, unless they had fingers like keys. Statworks on-call tech arrived just as we were unlooping the chain. He was young in that way that makes you feel time has picked its speed without asking you. Bright jacket, a satchel that rattled like it had everything but lunch. We've had no power to the passenger lifts since October, he said, as if the station had personally offended him. Only emergency circuits. Even those are supposed to be dead after hours. But Control saw the intercompanal light like it was trying to take a call. We went in together. Our torches made the dust in the air look like weather. The concourse had been stripped back to the bones, no tile, no posters, just the rhythm of columns and the long concrete slope of an escalator that had been wrapped up like a patient while the surgeons went for coffee. The sound lives differently underground. You feel more of it in your teeth. The 2-note tone was clearer here. Polite and patient. The way a machine asks a question 19 times the same way. The elevator doors stood open like a mouth. Inside the cab, where once there had been stainless steel, there was bare panel and a square hole where the emergency intercom had been. Not there then. The tech swore softly in a way that was almost a prayer. The intercom unit is upstairs, disconnected. They pulled it last week. Lightstell, I said. Confirm origin? You have the intercom number? Affirm. 3 to 21. Origin shows as U-Bahn Aufzug HZP West. Cabine A. That's the West lift car A. Control insists it's not powered. Fink moved toward the stairs that led down to the platform. If we're going to hear anything, it will be in the canyon, he said. We descended. The platform was a concrete trough without benches or signage. The safety strip studs felt like braille under our boots. On the wall, the fluorescent housings were empty. The light we had was ours, and the glow that trickled from the stairwell. The platform speakers, the little black horns mounted every few meters, were black and dead. You know the sound when they wake and pop for an announcement. I heard that pop now as clearly as I could breathe. A single, crisp pop, as if someone on a desk miles away had pressed a test button. Then, thin and far, as if the room was remembering a habit, came the 3-chime prelude of the line announcement. Ding dong ding. It cut off mid-syllable like a thought interrupted. The tech had stopped in the middle of the platform, his satchel against his hip. No way, he said, and then into his radio for his control. This is Mueller at Hohenzollernplatz. I just heard line chime through platform horns. We have no power to amplifiers. Please confirm you didn't send a test. A polite voice answered him with bureaucracy, dressed as apology. No test scheduled. No power to that segment. Nothing sent. Lightstell came back on ours. 3 to 21 for your awareness. The call taker hears the same chime. She can also hear your footsteps. The line is still open. Duration now 6 minutes. We walked the length of the platform because that's what you do when you don't yet know what else to do. We peered into the dark cut where the tracks would be, a trench filled with cables coiled like sleeping rope. We listened. We announced, Police, if you can hear us and you're in distress, call out. The station held its breath and then handed it back to us. At the north end, in the wall where the service corridor went off to a little office that had once had a kettle and a calendar of trains that never came on time, a red phone housing was mounted without its phone. Under it, someone had written, All's word gut, in a felt pen that had run out of courage halfway through the last stroke. The emergency lighting over the stairwell flickered and held, another habit without a power bill to explain it. Lightstell, I said. We found the elevator cab empty and the intercom unit removed. We're still hearing a two-note tone in the space and occasional platform chimes. Any update? Bundespolizei? En route? Affirm, she said. Bund is sending a patrol. Also, the call taker now reports faint speech under the tone female voice. Language unclear. Single word repeated. It could be artifact. Recording is active. The tech, Mueller, gave me that sideways look that says a person wants facts more than feelings. If somebody has gotten in from street level and pressed an old call panel upstairs, it could be backfeeding on something. But the panel is in our depot. On a shelf. Let's check the east entrance, Fink said quietly. He was doing the math I was doing. 2 entrances mean 2 ways to be wrong. We climbed the other side. The east entrance was under a steel shutter that had been zip-tied in half a dozen places. The city key would do nothing there. Behind the shutter, in the glass, I could see the reflection of our torches throwing light back at us in rectangles, as if waiting for us to stand still so it could be noticed. A different sound threaded itself into the tone. It was a faint relay click from the ticket barrier area, the kind a flap makes when it thinks it should be raising. There were no flaps. They had been pulled and left ghost outlines on the floor where grime ended and memory began. We stood with that small sound between us and everything else. It came again, regular then not, as if a polite machine was trying to behave without an audience. 3 to 21, Lightstell said in our ear. Bund is 5 out. The call line just reset and then resumed. Time now, 9 minutes. For your log. Earlier this month, 2 similar open lines from this location overnight. No person found. Stot work dismissed as technical. We met the Bundespolizei, pair at the west entrance, and did the exchange you do in tunnels. Information is passed quickly and without drama, because the walls will return whatever you bring to them. We agreed we'd finish a full walk with 2 sets of eyes while Mueller spoke continuously to his control about circuits that should have been asleep. It was during that second pass that the station did something so ordinary it felt strange. The platform digital clock, one of those LED squares that shows the minutes to the next train lit for a breath, didn't show numbers and went dark. It should have had no power. The Bundes officer, a woman who had that calm posture that makes the side of your job that is made of paper feel less lonely, put her hand to her belt and did nothing else because there was nothing else to do. We cleared the station a 3rd time in the way we do when we're about to admit to a thing that doesn't need admitting to. No persons. No sign of forced entry that would explain anything. All doors secured except the one we'd opened. Mueller locked it behind us and spun the padlock like he was sealing a jar against a slow leak. On the street, the drizzle had turned to the scratch of tiny snow. The city felt like it was waiting for a bus. Lightstell, I said. No persons found. We're clearing unless you need us to hold. Copy. 3 to 21. The line just terminated. Total duration 12 minutes. We'll attach recording. Stot work is opening an internal to check their circuits. Bundes notes same. Thanks. We wrote the boring lines that keep the world steady. Attended open Notruf. Origin elevator intercom. HZP West. Station closed. Full search. No persons. Unexplained tones and platform chimes observed. Stadtwerke präsent. Bonus present. That paper stacked on top of whatever else the night was going to give us, and we moved on to a drunk who only needed a cap and a door that had forgotten how to close. If the story ended there, it would be one more of 100 calls that half their weight is in the word unexplained, and you go home and you let your bed do the rest. But it didn't end quite yet. 3 nights later, just after 1 in the morning, Lightstell sent 3 to 24 on the same job while we were tied on something else. The CAD note from that call was almost identical, down to the 2-note tone and the chime. Fink and I swung past on our way to fill a thermos. The hoarding still held. The chain still held. The city key still worked. We put our heads in. Just to hear. The tone was back, polite as a bell under a cloth. We stood a long minute. The platform clock emitted a faint segment of light again, and then thought better of it. I asked Mueller later, in daylight with coffee and a table between us, what his people had decided. Residual current, he said, with the relief you hear when a man has found a domestic explanation for a night shape. Interference on the emergency bus. The intercom base will sometimes dial out if it sees a phantom switch. It shouldn't, but it can. He shrugged. The engineer's shrug that means every system is 1,000 parts and a prayer. We're pulling the bus. New cable. They pulled the bus. The calls mostly stopped. Then on a Monday morning at 5:58, 2 minutes before the new day's shift, would have made it someone else's problem. Lightstell put up a short. Open line. U-Bahn Hohenzollernplatz. Duration 23 seconds. Audio of platform announcement tone, followed by Bitte zurückbleiben faintly. No trains scheduled. It had the sense of a habit that had run ahead of its own schedule and then stepped back into place. I went back one afternoon when the construction crew was packing their tools. The hoardings were half down, the escalators looked like polished promise, and the platform had new tiles wearing that cream color that makes everyone look like they belong. The speakers were new. The clock worked. When the first test train came through weeks later with no passengers, I stood with a dozen workers and watched its headlights smear the tunnel. The announcement chime sounded like a practiced sentence. The doors opened to an empty platform, waited, then closed with a polite certainty. Everyone looked like people do when a thing is doing what it should do after a long time of not. Do I have an explanation that sits better than residual current? I have the ones that let you drive home without taking the night with you. Intercoms can dial on phantom signals. Power can find a way. Trains test even when you think they don't. Recordings bleed between lines. A dispatcher's console is a web, and sometimes catches something that fell in days ago. All of that is true. It also doesn't change the feel of standing underground at 1 in the morning in a closed station and hearing, soft as if a memory had to travel through concrete. A system politely asked the room to mind the doors. There's a quiet in tunnels that's not like surface quiet. It isn't emptiness. It's a list of instructions. Stand behind the line. Keep left. Mind the gap. Mind yourself. Our job is a list too. We show up. We listen. We write the neat version of a messy thing, and we don't make the world heavier than it already is. And sometimes, at the end of a call like that, when the city has come back to itself and the speakers are dumb, and the snow is small as salt, I say into a closed door what I say into open ones. Polizei ist da. Just in case what's left of a habit needed to hear someone answer.